Alexandre Pantoja just defeated Kai Asakura and defended his belt successfully for the third time in a row. Let's get into this. The fight starts and Alexandre Pantoja lands a heavy leg kick on Kai Asakura, and this was a big difference in this fight. Throughout the entire fight, every kind of technique that Pantoja was landing on Asakura had big impact behind it, and whenever Asakura was landing back, it just did not affect Pantoja in the same way. Case in point, this knee that Asakura lands, it landed more of the thigh to Pantoja's chin, but that still should, in theory, deal an extreme amount of force, and Pantoja just eats it and continues walking forward trying to get the takedown. One big difference in this fight was the grappling. Kai Asakura was just not equipped to deal with the heavy pressure that Alexandre Pantoja did, and because of that, I predicted Pantoja was going to get a fourth round club and sub finish. However, he did not even need to hurt Asakura on the feet. His grappling was effective from the opening bell. This was an interesting exchange here. Alexandre Pantoja has the body lock on Kai Asakura, and Asakura is fighting Pantoja's hands. He's defending well, and he starts to spin out of it. He pushes Pantoja's hand away and spins away from it. What is Pantoja doing with his leg? He's sticking it out, and he's trying to trip or sweep Asakura's legs as Asakura is leaving the clinch. That is going to be important later on, and you'll see why. Asakura gets out of the first clinch position relatively unscathed. Pantoja comes forward throwing a wild combination, and his punches do land. This was another noticeable flaw in Kai Asakura's game, his head movement, or lack thereof. Just a big punch that Pantoja is able to land, and from there goes right back into the takedown. Asakura actually does a good job of defending that takedown, and he pushes Pantoja up against the cage. He's on the outside now. However, when Asakura tries to disengage, Pantoja goes for that trip again, and he holds on to this collar tie and is able to trip Asakura down to the ground and end up in his closed guard. Asakura does a good job of fighting off of his back. He pins this overhook on Pantoja's arm, almost threatening a straight arm lock, essentially the same type of hyperextension that you would find in an armbar, but you can get that submission from guard. Pantoja pulls out of it, and due to that space that's created, Asakura is able to post Pantoja off of him and get back up to his feet, and they're back into the striking battle. Now Asakura was able to land some pretty good long-range strikes, leg kicks, he was throwing jabs, he landed some good jabs to the body. However, none of his weapons were as effective as whatever Pantoja was throwing at him. And you can see that Pantoja is throwing these wild combinations, and Asakura has to really struggle to avoid them because that is some lethal fire in Pantoja's fists. Great jab to the body, or not a jab, that's like a straight right to the body from Asakura. He feints the jab, using his length well. The issue is he just does not have the power that Pantoja has, and Pantoja has so much durability. This was probably the most devastating strike that Asakura landed in the entire fight. A front knee right into Pantoja's ribs and liver. This is the strike that Asakura used to knock out his last two opponents. You can go back and look at Asakura's record, and he has knee strike knockouts in his last two fights. And I think that blow that he landed would have doubled over any other person, but not Pantoja. Pantoja is the Wolverine. And again, whenever Pantoja lands, he's just landing with way more significance than Asakura is. Asakura was not able to move his head effectively, and Pantoja was having a field day with his target practice, able to just really land his strikes on Asakura. And this was a jumping left hook that Asakura landed, and it just barely wobbles Pantoja's head at all. We saw what happened with Urseg in the last fight that Pantoja had, where he just ate massive shots, and Asakura didn't get anywhere close. This was a great tool that Pantoja was using. He was using this inside teep kick almost right onto Asakura's knee. So Asakura does have the length on Pantoja, but this was a really effective weapon that Pantoja was using to keep distance between himself and the longer fighter. And this strike doesn't seem like a lot, but it was hyperextending Asakura's knee, and by the end of the round, you can see that it was really starting to bother Asakura. So this is a high kick that Asakura throws, and Asakura has great techniques. However, he just does not have the netting of the material required to kind of bring all of those techniques together and elevate his game above just individually good techniques. Pantoja has good striking, he has good cardio, he has great grappling, good submissions, heavy-handed, extremely durable. All of those things serve to elevate the entirety of his game. It's not just that he has one good jab or one good right hook or one good submission. He is an all-around complete fighter. And Pantoja blocks his head kick easily, lands a kick of his own, digging those feet into, it looks like, the chest of Asakura. And that body kick is another weapon that Pantoja was using well. Just another example of a leg kick that Pantoja landed on Asakura. Just Pantoja hitting way harder than Asakura, being way more durable than him as well. And this was a losing fight for Asakura since the bell began. Another combination where Pantoja just runs in, punching his way into the clinch. And this is something that grapplers are really good at, punching their way into the clinch and then going for a takedown immediately. Bilal Muhammad did it, Merab Dvalishvili does it, Islam Makhachev does it, and now Alexandre Pantoja does it. Also, you punch into the clinch, you punch out of the clinch. When your opponent is retreating, throw punches, throw knees. Pantoja lands a beautiful knee here that cracks Asakura on the cheek as he's leaving the clinch. They separate. Pantoja lands another body kick. He throws this combination a lot. Left, right side body kick. Similar to what Leon Edwards did, where he feints with his right hand and then the kick follows up behind it. And this one lands pretty nice into Asakura's body as he's retreating. Another combination from Pantoja, just punching his way into range, and he is the shorter fighter. He does have the smaller reach, and being inside is just going to be great for him against Asakura. Again, left, right, body kick, landed effectively. Another one of those teep kicks to the knee, another one of those teep kicks to the knee. And this is, if this just isn't the epitome of style, of substance beats style every time, I don't know what is. So you can see how much energy Asakura is using in this combination here, and just how simple Pantoja's movements are, and yet how much more effective Pantoja's movements are than Asakura's. So what does Asakura do? He jumps up and he's trying to land that knee. Once again, he's knocked out his last two opponents with it, so it is a useful weapon for him. Pantoja lands that teep kick to the knee that prevents Asakura from actually getting anywhere close to him. You can see he has this forward momentum. Pantoja kicks his knee out, and instead of leaping forward, he's now leaping straight up. And the other knee that he throws is not close to Pantoja at all. Pantoja avoids that right hand offering, just steps back and lands a left hand of his own. Just that little cuffing jab over the top of Asakura's lead hand. And just three extremely small movements. Just that teep kick, stepping back, and then popping your own jab over the top of Asakura's, landing twice, whereas Asakura is using all of this energy to explode upwards and then not landing anything at all. This is just veteran versus inexperienced right here. Another example of a teep kick at 8 seconds left in the round, landing flush for Pantoja, and then in the last second of the round, Pantoja goes to throw the teep kick, and you can see that Asakura's knee is actually starting to get pretty red, and Asakura sees that and switches his stances. That teep kick does not look like much, but it was really messing with Asakura's timing, his distance management, and it was just starting to hurt him. He did not enjoy it. Went over a little bit of the highlights, but we can take a look at some of the other ones. That brutal knee that Asakura landed, he is really quick with those, and he has great timing with them. But when he's fighting against some guy who is as tough as Pantoja, it's just not going to be as effective as it is against Juan Archuleta in Ryzen. Pantoja punching his way into the clinch, just landing clean on someone who doesn't move their head. It is not a very big risk of landing shots back onto Pantoja. Pantoja has an iron chin, but Asakura just does not have the volume needed to really override that chin. Round 2 starts and Pantoja lands a brutal jab, cracking Asakura's head back. You can see his eyes are wild. He doesn't know what hit him. He just throws a check right hook trying to land anything. Pantoja just sees everything coming. That first round was textbook work from Pantoja, and he's just looking for the blood in the water at this point. He eats a pretty big right hand from Asakura, but he even pulls away from it. He sees everything coming, and even if that landed flush, Pantoja's chin is on a different level. So he eats that hand, goes in for the clinch. Asakura is able to pull away, and remember when we talked about how Pantoja was looking for that trip all the time? Well, guess what? He finally got the trip. He follows Asakura down to the ground and just levitates onto his back. This is a beautiful back take. It literally looks like he is just levitating off the ground like Chris Angel style. Just levitates, simply decides to defy gravity, jump onto Asakura's back. Asakura does a decent job of getting to the cage to defend, and he has this half and half position. Pantoja is finally able to get Asakura off balance and gets his back one more time. Asakura rolls to the ground, and immediately Pantoja locks in this body triangle. So now we are at the position of the fight where one fighter has another fighter in a body triangle, and they were trying to threaten a choke or ground and pound. A lot of fighters cannot finish his choke. Pantoja does finish his choke in this fight. So what steps does Pantoja do to choke out his opponent here? Well, step number 1, Asakura is trying to remove this body triangle. He is trying to remove it by moving his thigh to put pressure on this leg. The first thing that Pantoja does is tuck his foot behind Asakura's thigh so that this thigh can't get behind the foot and start putting pressure to pry this lock apart. So you can see that as soon as Asakura puts his thigh back, Pantoja tucks his foot behind the thigh. Now, let's also take a look at the grips right now. Pantoja has his one arm over Asakura's right shoulder and his other arm underneath the armpit of Asakura's left shoulder. Pantoja starts putting heavy pressure with this right arm on Asakura's neck. Asakura is using both of his hands to defend against this arm because that is the most threatening arm at the moment. Pantoja lets him pull this arm back, and as soon as Asakura starts pulling the arm back, he flings his left arm directly, tightly onto Asakura's neck. So he uses misdirection. He makes Asakura think that this is the arm that Pantoja is going to try to choke him with. As soon as Asakura starts putting real pressure on this arm, look at how far Asakura's hands are from his neck. Pantoja uses that opening to get a real tight grip on Asakura's neck. So now he's got the behind the neck and the side and a little bit in the front as well. He really reaches, tucking his hand behind Asakura's shoulder, and he slides his hand into the crook of his own elbow to start to try to really work on that choke. Asakura does a good job of defending. You can see that he is fighting the hands, and he is starting to remove this grip from his neck. What does Pantoja do? Well, Pantoja uses this left arm that was the choking arm. Remember, that was the arm that was actually on Asakura's neck. I lost my spot. Where was I? Here it was. That was the arm that was on Asakura's neck and was the choking arm. He uses that arm to guide his right arm in. So his right arm is actually underneath his other arm right now, and he's sliding his right arm onto Asakura's neck now. So he keeps switching it one to the other, and he's using misdirection to get Asakura to focus on one arm, and then he's able to fling his other arm in when Asakura is not ready for it. Once again, He changes his grip and he just slides it in. And you can really see how he's using this arm to protect this one. It's underneath his elbow, his forearm's on top of it, and he's just sliding his fist underneath his arm, making sure that it's still tight. And now he has this classic rear naked choke where his choking arm is in the crook of his other arm. It's in the crook of the elbow of the other arm. And he's starting to really put the pressure on. Asakura does a great job of fighting it. Look at the strain in this body right now. Pantoja is not just using this body triangle to keep himself anchored to Asakura, but he's also using it to stretch out Asakura's body, really making it difficult for him to breathe even without getting choked, and making it difficult for him to defend. Asakura does a great job of grabbing the hand. He starts to pull it down, but this is something that a lot of people miss. What does Pantoja do? Asakura has both of his hands on Pantoja's hand. And in theory, he can get this arm across, and then he can start working on the choking arm to actually alleviate that choke. But Pantoja is smart. He shifts this hand down, and he goes palm to palm with the choke. And he gets the gable grip, and that makes the choke even tighter. And from there is no defense. He's trying to pull apart this grip, but it's too tight. And ultimately, Kai Asakura is out of options. He gets choked out. And you can see his arm goes limp. And Jason Herzog notices it and steps in, stops the fight. And just like that, Alexandre Pantoja has now 3 title defenses. Now, if we talk about Demetrius Johnson has a little bit more than 3 title defenses. And we can take a look, and he was on an 11-fight title defense streak. So a little bit more than what we're seeing Alexandre Pantoja have. But Alexandre Pantoja is creating a reign for himself, beating Brandon Moreno, beating Brandon Royval, beating Steve Erceg, beating Kai Asakura. The UFC is running out of contenders to throw at Pantoja. Kai Asakura was the champion from a organization in Japan, Ryzen, and he was woefully underprepared to experience the type of pressure, the heavy hands, and the resilience that Alexandre Pantoja had to bring towards him. I don't know who is going to be able to beat him. Maybe Brandon Moreno, maybe Brandon Royval. We will see. All of the people that could possibly beat Pantoja's already beaten multiple times. I would love to see the UFC rehire Muhammad Mokaev and have one of the greatest grappling matches at flyweight ever. That is my opinion. What I do know for sure is that Pantoja is a legit MMA fighter, and I know a lot of UFC fans are not super happy with him because his last few performances were a little bit of lay and pray. But at the top of the division, lay and pray is an effective strategy, and it's up to other fighters to figure out strategies to try to beat that strategy. And as it stands now, Alexandre Pantoja is the best flyweight in the fucking world.